Imagine a territory full of mountains and deep valleys, where the cool morning breeze transforms into scorching heat at midday. In this dramatic setting lived a people with an indomitable spirit, the Samnites. Over generations, they developed unique combat techniques and found, amid every cliff, the strength to face battles that seemed impossible. Nothing could be more challenging than confronting the ever-growing expansion of one of the greatest military powers of antiquity, Rome. But how did these brave warriors, masters of ambush tactics, manage to resist a giant so disciplined and determined to conquer the entire Italian territory? And what would happen when daring leaders like Pyrrhus of Epirus or the fearsome Hannibal crossed paths with the Samnites, offering new opportunities for revolt against Roman rule? Hold on to that curiosity, because throughout this script, we will explore every chapter of this saga, full of twists, heroic sacrifices, and above all, a yearning for independence that echoes to this very day. But before we dive into these battles and intrigues, make sure you're subscribed to our channel and hit the notification bell. That way, you won't miss any of our videos packed with historical curiosities about ancient Rome. The birth of an indomitable people. What if I told you that it all began with a sacred ritual that sent young people to found new lands? Get ready, because we're about to discover how this custom shaped the first steps of the Samnite people. The Samnites emerged in the mountainous region of the central southern Italian peninsula, where part of Campania is located today. It is believed that their origins date back to the Oscan-speaking peoples, linked to the ancient Osco-Umbrians. Unlike other nations structured under a strong centralized government, the Samnites organized themselves into independent tribes. They were like siblings who, despite their differences, united their forces whenever external threats arose. A religious practice known as ver sacrum, or sacred spring, recounted the sending of young people consecrated to the gods to colonize new lands when the population exceeded local resources. According to some accounts, these youths followed an animal, in some versions a sacred bull, to a safe and fertile location where they established their settlements. For many, this is how the Samnite presence was consolidated amid the rocky slopes of Samnium, an environment that would soon shape their warrior mentality. This quest for survival from the very beginning made the Samnites a resilient people. Living in hard-to-reach areas, they quickly learned to take advantage of every slope and trail. Hence, their reputation as adaptable warriors, ready for lethal ambushes, was born. Have you ever wondered how a simple religious ritual could influence the formation of an entire people? If that detail surprised you, hit the like button now so we can continue bringing you stories as intriguing as this one. Mountain warriors and the ambush strategy. After learning about the sacred origins of the Samnites, how about we see how they turned mountains into natural fortresses? This is just the beginning of their war tactics. The Samnites were always surrounded by towering elevations and deep valleys. They didn't have vast plains for maneuvering large armies, so they developed strategies adapted to the irregular terrain. Their discipline wasn't as rigid as that of the Romans, but they mastered the mountain passes. Ambushing enemy armies was almost a combat ritual for these warriors, who in most cases wore light armor and attacked at crucial moments, catching heavier opponents by surprise. In small groups, they knew every stone and every bend of the terrain, using that knowledge to set traps. Many of their warriors were shepherds living atop the mountains, where constant vigilance came naturally. While Rome relied on solid formations and the strength of its legions, the Samnites depended on their mobility and the advantage provided by the landscape. When an enemy contingent entered a narrow valley, the Samnites would appear on the flanks, attack with fury, and vanish before an effective response could be mounted. This style of combat, based on speed and the element of surprise, brought the Samnites several early victories. Historians like Titus Livius, a man with fair skin, a neatly trimmed beard, and a watchful gaze attuned to the events of his time, recorded the admiration the Romans had for the efficiency of these supposedly less civilized enemies. It was this adaptability that made the Samnites a real obstacle to Rome's growth and led to the first temporary non-aggression agreements. The first encounter with Rome. But why did Rome, so powerful, end up signing treaties with a people it considered rustic? Let's uncover the seed of the rivalry that would ignite the entire peninsula. Amid Rome's expansion, the Samnites were recognized as a serious obstacle to be overcome. The first approach occurred around 354 BC, when Rome established a treaty defining spheres of influence. This reveals that, at that moment, the Romans, already famous for their military discipline, preferred diplomacy over direct conflict. Still, it wasn't long before Roman ambition began to grow again, especially in the south in Campania. At that time, Samnite territory wasn't merely a mass of rocks, it also extended over some fertile areas. And when Rome needed to secure trade routes and supplies for its army, they naturally began placing their legions at strategic points that either belonged to or interested the Samnites. That's how tension ignited, leading to the first major conflict, the First Samnite War, 343-341 BC. Titus Livius's records indicate that the Romans, confident in their own organization, underestimated the Samnites' mastery of the terrain. But the war didn't end with the destruction of either side. On the contrary, it resulted in a peace treaty that granted Rome certain advantages, while the Samnites maintained relative autonomy. However, this apparent balance was only a prelude to much fiercer confrontations that would shake the entire peninsula. Are you enjoying this journey through the far reaches of the Italian peninsula? If you haven't shared your opinion yet, drop your thoughts in the comments below right now. The Battle of the Caudine Forks. And now comes the moment that would be marked as one of Rome's greatest humiliations. Are you ready to learn the outcome of the Samnite boldness? The Second Samnite War, 326-304 BC, was a true test of Roman pride. Confident that they could advance further south, the legions encountered a legendary ambush in the narrow passes of Caudium in 321 BC. The chronicles of Titus Livius describe the bewilderment of the Roman soldiers as they realized they were surrounded by high terrain, with no escape route. In a daring maneuver, the Samnites, led by experienced generals, forced the Roman army to surrender. As proof of total submission, they compelled the legionaries to pass under the so-called yoke, spears arranged in a low arch, under which the Romans had to crouch in a sign of humiliation. It was as if Rome's military glory had been trampled by men who were supposedly less organized and less prepared. However, this act of extreme humiliation came at a high cost for the Samnites. Rome would never forgive a wounded pride. Decades later, retaliation came in the form of constructing strategic roads, such as the Appian Way, and adopting tactical reforms that allowed the Romans to corner their enemies in subsequent battles. This episode thus became a turning point in the Roman mindset, one that would not rest until it completely subdued its Caudine tormentors. Rome's counterattack and the rise of the Appian Way. Defeated and humiliated, Rome decided to rewrite its destiny. But how exactly did it manage to turn the tide against such a persistent enemy? The construction of the Appian Way is a symbol of this strategic rebirth. Led by consuls such as Quintus Fabius, a man with a noble bearing and austere features, the Romans realized that their greatest problem was the difficulty of accessing the Samnite mountainous regions. The solution they found was to literally pave the way for their legions. The military road, which connected Rome to the southern part of the peninsula, allowed for rapid troop movement and ensured a constant supply of armaments and provisions. Moreover, Roman armies began to adapt by incorporating auxiliary contingents and coordinating their territorial explorations. Each Roman advance encountered resistance, but numerical superiority and discipline always prevailed. The Second Samnite War extended for almost 2 decades, full of twists and turns. In the end, however, Rome's might prevailed, imposing treaties on the Samnites that reduced their freedom and forced them to acknowledge Roman hegemony over strategic regions. Many Samnites retreated to their mountains, but the hatred for domination only grew stronger, waiting for the right moment to erupt again. Did you already know the importance of the Appian Way in Rome's expansion? If not, share this video with that friend who loves learning historical curiosities. The last attempt at resistance, the Third Samnite War. Would the Samnites give up fighting after so many setbacks? Get ready, because a great coalition would emerge in the peninsula. After the end of the Second Samnite War, many believed that the mountain people were defeated. However, in 298 BC, when the Third Samnite War erupted, the Samnites once again surprised Rome, this time by uniting with other powerful peoples, such as the Etruscans, Umbrians, and even Gauls. It was a gigantic coalition, formed to try to halt Roman expansion once and for all. In this confrontation, the Battle of Sentinum, 295 BC, stands out as one of the greatest battlefields in ancient Italian history. In this battle, the Romans faced a combined force that, although lacking the same discipline, made up for it with the diversity of fighters and their fury against Rome. Historians like Titus Livius tell us that Publius Decius, a Roman consul, with fair skin and scars that testified to his experience, performed his famous act of devotio, sacrificing himself to the gods to secure Rome's victory. The coalition eventually disintegrated under persistent Roman pressure. The Samnites, weakened by defeat, were forced to submit to increasingly harsh conditions. Their lands were gradually absorbed, and their ability to form independent armies suffered severe restrictions. But if there is one thing Samnite history shows us, it is that they always found a reason to resume the fight, even against all odds. The Pyrrhic War, the last hope of the Samnites. Who could help a people already exhausted confront the Roman powerhouse? Meet the man who brought war elephants and new hope to the Samnites. Pyrrhus of Epirus, a Greek king with fair skin, curly hair, and an imposing military bearing, landed on the Italian peninsula at the invitation of the southern Greek cities that were under threat from Rome. Seeing a golden opportunity, several Samnites allied themselves with Pyrrhus, believing they could finally free themselves from Roman rule. Pyrrhus's early victories in battles such as Heraclea and Asculum showed the world that Rome was not yet invincible. The Samnites aided Pyrrhus with troops and local guides. After all, they knew the mountainous terrain like no one else. For a short period, a sense of hope engulfed the Samnite tribes, who dreamed of regaining control of their lands. However, successive battles exacted a very high toll on Pyrrhus's army. His famous remark, "One more victory like this and we are lost," gave rise to the term Pyrrhic victory, meaning conquests achieved at great cost. Eventually, Pyrrhus realized that even while winning battles, he could not definitively subjugate Rome. Roman diplomacy and their vast capacity to replenish soldiers eventually overcame Pyrrhus's efforts. With the Greek king's departure from Italy, the Samnites were once again left without strong enough allies to face the might of Rome. Yet the flame of rebellion did not extinguish. The alliance with Hannibal. When all seemed lost, a new enemy of Rome emerged from afar, crossing mountains and bringing war elephants. Could it be that now the Samnites would finally have their revenge? The legendary Carthaginian general Hannibal, with his olive skin and Phoenician features, emerged as a great hope for several oppressed Italian peoples. In 218 BC, when he crossed the Alps, overcoming even the harshest weather conditions, Rome was caught off guard. In devastating battles such as Trebia, Trasimene, and Cannae, Hannibal humiliated the Roman legions. Seeing Rome's temporary weakness, the Samnites allied themselves with the Carthaginians. Once again, they guided armies through rugged paths and provided reinforcements with men trained in mountain warfare. For a period, it seemed they were closer than ever to expelling the Roman eagles from their domains. However, the Roman war machine restructured itself under generals like Scipio Africanus. Hannibal's defeat, especially after the decisive Battle of Zama in 202 BC, put an end to the Samnites' hopes of regaining complete independence. Yet the final blow was still to come, and it would be much more cruel, led by one of the most feared men of the Roman Republic. The social war and the Battle of the Capian Gate. Do you want to know how the struggle for citizenship and freedom nearly brought the Samnites to the gates of Rome? Get ready for one of the bloodiest episodes of this entire saga. In 91 BC, several Italian peoples, including the Samnites, rebelled in search of the same political rights as Roman citizens. This conflict became known as the Social War. For the Samnites, however, it was more than just politics. It was their chance to reclaim sovereignty. A key figure in this movement was Pontius Telesinus, with his light olive skin and penetrating gaze, whose determination inspired entire battalions. In 82 BC, during the civil wars between the supporters of Marius and Sulla, the Samnites saw a new opportunity to rise against Rome. They allied themselves with Marius's faction, believing they could reclaim their lands if he won. Thus occurred the iconic Battle of the Capian Gate, practically at the entrance of Rome itself. Commanded by Pontius Telesinus, the Samnites fought with a ferocity that nearly brought Roman power to its knees. However, Sulla, an experienced general, with fair skin and war-worn wrinkles, led the Roman forces with a brutality never before seen. The Roman victory sealed the tragic fate of the Samnites. Sulla ordered mass massacres and destroyed entire regions of Samnium, imposing a terror aimed at erasing the identity of a people who had resisted for centuries. The end of a nation, but not its history. After so much struggle and sacrifice, does any legacy of the Samnites remain? It's time to uncover the legacy of this people. With Sulla's campaigns, many Samnites were killed or enslaved. The once populated cities turned into ruins, and the Oscan language, once proudly spoken by the tribes, gradually disappeared, replaced by Rome's Latin. What remained of the Samnites was absorbed into Roman society, losing customs, rituals, and even the collective memory of their greatness. However, historians like Titus Livius, with his fair skin and ever-watchful eye on the records of the past, did not let this people fall into total oblivion. In his works, he described Samnite bravery in detail, recording every battle and every sacrifice. Other scholars also found archaeological traces, such as weapons, utensils, and inscriptions, that reveal the rich cultural and religious life of the Samnites. Whether in war chronicles or in the ruined monuments, the Samnite spirit remains alive as a story of resistance against an empire that seemed invincible. And even though they were defeated on the battlefield, their narrative echoes as a reminder that behind every great Roman conquest, there were valiant peoples who fought with strength and honor to defend their freedom. Over centuries of conflict, the Samnites demonstrated an unwavering willpower. Even in the face of an expanding Rome, they resisted bravely, using the mountainous terrain, surprising alliances, and above all, a passion for independence that no defeat could extinguish. Every battle, every ambush, and every sacrifice resonates to this day as a testament to their courage. If you enjoyed this journey through time and want to continue exploring stories as fascinating as that of the Samnites, subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share this video with your friends. Let's keep alive the memory of these peoples who made history so rich and moving. Thank you for watching, and until our next dive into ancient Rome.